Hey everybody, Mike McWilliams upstairs to the right music. Well, today I'd like to do a comparison that I've been wanting to do. It's been a long time in the thinking, and certainly a long time in the making, between a top-of-the-line Epiphone guitar and a top-of-the-line USA Standard. So I saw in NAMM in January of last year that Epiphone was coming out with something they were calling the Epiphone Les Paul 59. It had specs that sounded familiar to me: long neck tenon, solid body mahogany, maple cap and veneer, 50s neck, and I said to myself, well, that kind of sounds like the Orville by Gibson guitars that came out in Japan in the 90s. So I felt that Epiphone had come out with something that it would be a fair platform to do a comparison with the USA Standard, because a lot of the electronics, the pickups, the wiring, a lot of things about this particular Epiphone are very similar to that Les Paul Standard, that 2019. Starting off, I'd really like to approach this by saying that I love the made in Japan Orville by Gibson guitars. And the minute that I took this guitar out of the case, it felt like that. It felt like one of those guitars. I've played many of them. Also, the Orville by Gibson LPS 80 is an extremely comparable guitar to this one, with the exception of the rosewood on the LPS 80, and this one has Indian Laurel on the fretboard. So we're going to start off by doing a side-by-side comparison, a kind of versus battle, and then we're going to do some tone checks and both guitars, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So enjoy the show. Okay, so here we have both guitars side by side. Here on my right, we have the 2019 Les Paul Standard 60s in the Iced Tea Burst. Here on my left, we have the 2020 Epiphone Les Paul 59. Both fantastic guitars. I'm just going to tell you that in 2019, when they came out with the Standard 50s and 60s, and here in 2020 when they came out with the 59 kit, Epiphone and Gibson really knocked it out of the ballpark with these guitars. So we're just going to start this conversation off from there, so you know where we're going to be going today. Because I'm not going to knock these down. You hear a lot of stories about how there are quality control issues coming out of Gibson and coming out of Epiphone. I have experienced some small things. Let's get those out of the way first. Here on the Epiphone, right here in the corner, see, can you see it? Boy, you can't see it, can you? Nobody else will. There's a little bit of bleed onto the binding, but and here on the Gibson, there was a little bit of tooling marks on the binding. So both very minor binding issues that I really don't think disqualifies either of these guitars. You say to yourself, well, I paid $800 for this and I expect perfection. Well, it's hit and miss. You're going to have to try to search through guitars. You got to play through guitars anyway. Anyway, so I digress. So two minor QC issues with both of these, both regarding binding. Both of them, so minuscule in nature, not even worth mentioning, other than just to be fair and to get that out of the way. Okay, so there's that. What's terrific about these guitars? Well, let's talk about the weights. This Epiphone weighs in at 8.8 pounds. This Les Paul Standard weighs in at 9.8 pounds. So a full 1 pound difference between these two. Yeah, I have to, if I'm going to give it to weight in this shootout, I'd have to give it to the Epiphone. Keep in mind both of these are solid body guitars, so solid mahogany. Flip them around. So we have solid mahogany on both of these guitars. No veneer on the back of this Epiphone. A lot of Epiphones come out with a back veneer. However, this is a solid maple back. We have a maple cap with a maple veneer on top of that plain maple cap on the Epiphone. You have a full maple cap on the Les Paul Standard. So if we're getting into the tops next, I would have to give this match out to, of course, the Gibson. I mean, let's be honest. The kind of shine and depth of coloration in the wood grain that you get out of a full maple cap is nothing to be denied. I mean, you're obviously not doing bad with the Gibson veneer. I think in the case of this one, they did a fantastic job. The finish on the Gibson is their, high gloss. The finish on the Epiphone is something that they're calling their VOS. Their attempt at getting the custom shop aged matte finish look. Out of the box, next, let's do that. Out of the box. All right, so let's move on. So let's talk about out of the box. Out of the box, these two guitars had slightly different stories. Out of the box, this Les Paul Standard just needed to have the fretboard oiled. It was really, really dry. I bought it from Barry Witt over at Dirk Witt Music in Utrecht. I've been doing business with him for 20 years when he used to have a shop here in Amsterdam. So he does a great job setting them up in the shop. So this one had no problems at all. I also purchased this one from him as well, this Epiphone. He set it up as well, but I do top wrapping, so I had to do my own setup on it, also change the strings. However, out of the box, I would have to say that this guitar seriously was dry. The fretboard needed conditioning, the frets needed polishing, the body needed polishing. This veneer has a very thin poly coat on it in order to give it that matte look. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't need to have a polish done on it. And once I did a polish on it, guitar polish, a wax, Karoom wax, is that how you pronounce that? It's a tough one. On it, I have to say it looks so much better. And as you can see, it's a gorgeous top, nonetheless. So yeah, totally different stories here. This needed a complete setup. And by the way, that's something you should calculate. Some companies will offer you to have something plecked, or they'll offer services in changing the nut and things of that nature. If you purchase a set of tools in order to do your own setups and learn the skill of doing that, you'll save yourself a lot of money in the long run. In the Army, you have to be able to take your weapon apart and put it back together again. In some special forces, blindfolded. I'm not saying that you have to do your guitar setups blindfolded, but you should consider learning that skill. Saves you a lot of money. Setup on both of these were relatively easy. So let's just say that we'll give the Gibson edge in this contest out of the box over this one. Epiphones, they need work, but once you work them, if you get a good one and you do a good setup on it, they're fine instruments, and I'll tell you that's what this is right now. Next, let's talk about the hardware. The hardware on this, okay, really interesting. Let's go from top to bottom. On the Gibson tailpiece, tailpieces are really important. You want to have a aluminum tailpiece, preferably a lightweight one, between 27 to about 36 grams at the top end. The tailpiece on this Gibson weighs in at 34 grams, so just almost at the top end, but a very good piece that did not need to be replaced. The Epiphone, on the other hand, the tailpiece on the Gibson, there was no need to replace it. On the other hand, the Epiphone tailpiece, when I took it off and weighed it came in at a whopping 74 grams. And that is just unacceptable for a lot of reasons, a lot of them doing with your tone overall. So it is stylistically a gorgeous looking tailpiece. However, that's its main function, in my opinion. So if we're going to score that piece of hardware, definitely the Gibson takes the ring on that one, because you're going to have to replace that, in my opinion. And if you don't feel the need to do that, and someday you come across the extra funds to purchase one, just do it and swap them out and just play it, and you'll thank me later. Next, moving on to the bridges. The bridge on this guitar is actually different. This is the Nashville bridge that you get on every USA Standard. This is actually an Epiphone design of an actual 59 Standard bridge. They are completely different, so we'll have to just give a equal mark on that. They're both functional for these guitars because of the design. Moving on to the pickups. Over here we have burst bucker pickups. The BBs on this one are the BB2 in the neck and the BB3 in the bridge. Now, a lot of people would want to say, okay, first thing I'm gonna do is get that Epiphone and change the pickups to whatever. I'm gonna have to tell you, after playing this, I think that these BB2 and 3 pickups are excellently. Burst Bucker 61T and 61R in the USA Standard. These are fantastic pickups in both of these guitars, and absolutely no need to change either one of them out. So in terms of pickups, I'd have to give these guys equal marks. Both of them have the same toggle switch. Interestingly enough, underneath the hood in the wiring, on the Gibson, we have orange drop capacitors. On the Epiphone, we have Mallory capacitors. Now, Mallory capacitors are the original capacitors that were in an actual 59 burst. So in terms of sound qualities, you're going to get that treble bleed and everything coming out of this one, and you do, and you'll hear that in the sound samples, as opposed to the orange caps and the hand wiring. In this guitar, this one has a 50 style wiring. This has a plate underneath the wiring board, underneath the wire. This one has a plate underneath the wires, as opposed to this guitar, which has a true 50 style wiring. It's just right into the mahogany. So from a wiring standpoint, I prefer 50 style wiring, so I'm going to have to give this battle over to the Epiphone. Let's move on to the neck. The neck profiles on these two guitars are quite different. This is where I had wished that I had the standard 50s. I think that would be a more apropos comparison. On the standard 60s, you have the 60s taper neck, which has a lot of shoulder to it and is a fantastic neck. I really do enjoy playing it. Over here on the Epiphone, you have something that the guys at Epiphone really worked hard at. They took a true 59 burst, took the measurements of the neck, and really worked hard to get an authentic 59 neck. Rolled shoulders on this thing. I love the neck on this one. If I'm going to give it in terms of neck preference, I'd have to give it over to the Epiphone. In terms of feel, as you know, you have a gloss finish on this guitar, you have a matte finish on this one. I'd have to also give it to the Epiphone on that as well, because this matte finish it doesn't get sticky, as you know, sometimes, especially when I was in Singapore and was playing that, this finish on the back of the Gibson Standard has. Now, in time of a lot of playing, it'll wear down. It already has a little bit, especially up here. But out of the box, I like the neck on this one. I like the feel of this neck. It's a chunkier neck, but it's not 58 chunky. It's nowhere like that Tokai Love Rocks 80 LS80 neck that we looked at a couple of years ago in Tokyo. This is a fantastic neck on this thing. I truly do love this. I have played a burst, as you know, and this does, you know, just from my memory, you know, my hand feel memory, is very, very compatible, very, very close, very close. So I'm going to give it to the neck on the Epiphone, interesting enough. Tuners, it comes down to a matter of preference, actually, whether you like Klusons or not. Either one of these do the job. So there is that. So what are my final thoughts? At the end of the day, it comes down to price points. The Epiphone is priced at $7.99 retail. The USA Standard is $24.99. Is there a difference in the woods and build quality there to have such a huge gap in terms of price between those two guitars? In my opinion, yes. The build and the woods used in the Gibson Les Paul Standard are noticeable when you put them side by side with the Epiphone. However, that does not detract from the quality of the Epiphone guitar. As I said before, when I took it out of the case and held it, it was familiar to me because I've played so many Japanese-made Orville by Gibson guitars. The LPS 80, 85, for example, are very comparable to this Epiphone. The Tokai Love Rocks LS80, very comparable to this guitar. And I hold those guitars, and so do many other people out there in guitar land, hold those guitars in such high esteem. To put this Epiphone made in China up to the level of that is a significant statement. What I'm saying to you is at $7.99, you're getting a fantastic value, especially when those Orville by Gibsons in the 90s now are going as much as a Les Paul Classic from the 90s. So you got to take that in mind as well. Sure, the Les Paul Standard is a fantastic guitar, but I think that you have as fantastic guitar with this Epiphone's Les Paul Standard 59. Now, I would gig with the 59, I would record with the 59. Once I get the tailpiece straightened out and once I change the nut, the two things that I would do, my opinions, out of the box, if you like the way it sounds, fantastic. You're not going wrong there. I'm going to fine tune it. And I think I'm going to have a fantastic guitar. I really do like the Analytical 2 unpotted pickups in it. I think that they sound fantastic. I think the Gibson pickups sound fantastic. So with the wiring and with the hardware aspects of it, they're very comparable. So you're really not missing out on much. If you got the bread, the $24.99 to buy the Gibson, you know what I would do? I would buy the Epiphone and I would spend the rest on a really great amp. And maybe if you got any money left over, a really good distortion pedal. And then you can go to town. If you have a fantastic amp, a real decent guitar, you're there. That's all you really need. So if you have to have it, then sure, get the Les Paul Standard. But you'd not be missing out on anything in terms of tonal quality, in my opinion. So that's it for today's show. I hope you enjoyed the subject today as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. I really want to thank everybody for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, why don't you take a chance with us? We have a lot of great stuff like this every week. And until the next show, you guys take care. Bye-bye.